Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Low Budget Review Show. I'm your host, Eric Smith, and today I'm talking about We Came Back by Patrick Lacey. And this is from Sinister Grin Press. This is the story of Linwood. Not really, it just takes place in Linwood. And in Linwood, 10 years ago, a kid by the name of Melvin Brown committed suicide right in the middle of the cafeteria in Linwood High School. And in the present day, that school's been shut down. There's a new high school, and some of the best and brightest students at this new Linwood High School begin to change, kind of go with a dark goth kind of look. Their behavior changes, and it starts freaking out the people around them. Their personalities change, and the question is, how does it tie in with what happened to Melvin 10 years ago, and how crazy are things going to get? So that's your basic setup, as always. Excuse me, We Came Back, Patrick Lacey. I really enjoyed this book. Let's just get that out of the way right now. And I like the way the story is told. We start off with something mysterious going on, and then we start to meet our characters. And the first character we meet is Vicky, I believe her name is, and she's one of the top students at Linwood High, pushed by her parents. Her sister is an overachiever, so she's trying to be an overachiever, and something happens to her. We don't know what it is yet, and then that sort of gets set aside, and we meet some more of our characters. Our main characters, we have Alyssa, who happens to be dating a rather alternative looking fellow named Busty Brown, and he's a bit older. She's still in high school. He's out of high school, so her dad, Frank, doesn't really approve, just because he's older and he's different. It's not the kind of guy a father necessarily wants going out with his teenage daughter. But then we have Justin, who is Alyssa's ex, and he just happens to live right across the street, so that's a whole situation going on there. And we meet a bunch of other people, different characters in the school and around the town, different teachers. Frank's a teacher at the school, and he happened to be there 10 years ago in the cafeteria when Melvin killed himself. And so I really like the way this is written. I really like the characters. Alyssa is pretty much a typical teenager. She argues with her parents, but she does love her parents. And she had a twin brother who died many, many years ago. Her father, Frank, isn't able to get over it. Her mother, Alyssa, and her mother have moved on. They haven't forgotten about the dead brother, but her father's the one that really kind of holds on to it. And Justin, the ex, he's still in love with her, and kind of worried that she's dating this creepy dude. And his father died very recently, and so he's dealing with that. And he doesn't really, the new school year is starting, and Justin's really not looking forward to going back to school because of all his father died so recently that he's concerned about how he's going to be treated at school as the kid with the dead father. And so you have all this sort of normal stuff going on. And meanwhile, as I said, these students, the best and the brightest, start changing. Vicky, we see what happens to her. And then and when she shows up at school, this was the prim and proper student, and now she's wearing incredibly revealing, and I'm not saying it's bad that she's wearing revealing clothing and behaving completely out of character. Just the fact that it is out of character is is what the issue is here. And then the captain of the football team changes. And then there's an honor society, and the members of the honor society start to change. And this group of students that are becoming these sort of, again, dark, gothic, rebellious people, it's growing and growing. And people start calling them the Linwood Vampires. But they're not actually vampires. They're at school during the day. They're out. They're doing their thing. But there is something going on, and we do get hints of what it is. Eventually, of course, we'll find out. But I don't want to give any of that away. Excuse me. So I really like all of these characters. They're all very three-dimensional. They feel realistic. And we get to know enough about some of the characters that change that we do see what a dramatic difference it is. And Justin wants to know what's going on. Frank wants to know what's going on as a teacher. He's on the front line seeing this sort of thing, just as the students are. And as I said, we do get to know some of the other teachers, how they react to what's going on, and how they're treated by these new rebellious students. And it's very creepy, and it builds and builds and builds until we get to the explosive ending that really a lot of stuff that goes on at the end. It's wild. The last book that I reviewed by Patrick Lacey was Dreamwoods, and I think I gave it 3.5 out of 5. And as entertaining as that was, I did say that it felt like it lacked a little depth. I really enjoyed it, but it was a lot of icing, more icing than cake. I don't know if that makes any type of sense, but this book really, Patrick Lacey has stepped up his game, and I can't even say that it lacks depth, because he does really give us, the characters were fine in Dreamwoods, but he's really stepped it up in this one. I think you're going to really care for the characters. You're going to be interested in these characters. You're going to be rooting for some and not so much rooting for other ones. Of course, depends on your mindset. Maybe you're rooting for the bad guys. I don't know. But, and even Melvin Brown, as we get to know what happened to him, what was going on 10 years ago, there are some surprises with the character of Melvin. I was very surprised by something that had to do with him. I'm not going to spoil it and say what it is, obviously, but it was not something I was expecting at all. So that was I like that. If I'm surprised, if you're a heavy reader like I am, it's really tough to be surprised by something. And this, I thought was, I'm going to use the word surprise again. It took me by surprise, and that was good. So, really a fantastic story. Lacey does a great job with this, just building up the characters, building up the story, building up the tension. Things ramp up at a good speed. And even the slower, more interpersonal moments are just so well written, and again, have a depth to them. I don't think this is going to spoil anything too much. There's a point where Frank, who is not a fan of Justin, again, fathers not necessarily fans of any boy that's dating their daughter, so he's really not a fan of Justin. But he ends up coming to Justin and asking him for help, because they both can see that something is not right in the town of Linwood. So they end up kind of teaming up a little bit, even though they're not completely honest with each other. So I really enjoy the build-up, and then once things just go crazy, it's I'm going to take a look here. Let's see. All right. I don't want to have a lot of dead space. So we're looking at about 361 pages. And let's see. So about Oh yeah, maybe 100 pages of the maybe even more of the finale. It's the final, the big set piece for lack of, I don't know, but it's so 2/3. You could call it setup, but it's really really good setup. A lot of stuff going on, and then you've got that last 100 pages is pretty good for a big giant. It's not a single scene, but it is the big finale. So that's that, I guess. I kind of faltered there at the end, but I mean, it's a fantastic story. So the way I'm kind of gushing, you're not going to be surprised when I give this 5 out of 5. Front doors with railroad spikes, bloody railroad spikes driven into them. And it's not completely something taken from the story. Well, kind of. I'm not giving anything away here. It was tough for me to come up with something to draw from my ratings, because the few things that I thought would be great, I think, kind of give away too much in the story. This is vague enough, I think. But 5 out of 5 is the important part. Really, as I said, Patrick Lacey knocked it out of the park with this one, in my opinion. Again, as entertaining as Dreamwoods was, this one just really much, much better. I was trying to think of a movie analogy, and this is the best I could come up with. Was if Dreamwoods is a good slasher film, then We Came Back is the freaking Exorcist. And neither of the stories is either one of those things. Dreamwoods isn't a slasher story. This isn't a possession story. I'm just trying to show the difference in the stories. So if you take a good slasher film, usually you don't find a lot of depth, but you're entertained, and you can have decent characters. But then The Exorcist, I mean, that's a lot of people would consider that one of the best horror films, if not the best horror film ever made. I'm not saying this is the best horror novel ever, just making the comparison. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody out there. But anyway, that's what I'm going to say. So that's We Came Back by Patrick Lacey. I don't think I'm forgetting anything that I wanted to say. I covered great characters, good story. I have completely ignored what the horror is, other than the students sort of changing personality. Oh, and I did want to mention that I liked the fact, usually in this type of story where you see a cult or a group or whatever, and they're not a cult, it's usually the outcasts that become a part of this. I've seen a few people mention Lost Boys when they're talking about this, and in that it is the outcasts that become part of the thing. And in here, it's nice. I think it's a nice little twist on the trope. It is the best and the brightest. It's the best students and the most popular students that become a part of this thing, and it's not. I don't see that very often, if at all. So that was a nice little twist. So I got that, and I think that covers what I wanted to say. I'm not going to tell you what the horror part is. You got to read it to find out for yourself. But it's good. It's some terrifying things go on, some violent things go on, but it's very. I really really enjoyed this. I mean, as I said, 5 out of 5. That should convey how much I enjoyed this book. And I'm looking forward to the next thing that Patrick Lacey does. I don't know if he's going to be able to, hopefully, I mean, if he keeps improving from book to book, then I'm going to have to possibly break the laws of mathematics again. And, maybe that's a challenge to Patrick Lacey. If you can write something good enough to earn a 6 out of 5, and this is close. It's really good. Definitely at this point, top 10 books of the year for me. Could be higher. We'll see how the rest of the year goes. And I mentioned that in a lot of my reviews where I'm placing books, and then I never do a top 10 list. So I may have to do that at the end of the year, a top 10 list for books. But definitely, at this point, this is in the top 10. Really, really enjoyed this. I could see myself rereading this relatively soon. I'd like to revisit this story. I enjoyed it that much. So there you have it. That is We Came Back by Patrick Lacey. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put them in the comments below. Comments will be open for spoilers. So if you want more details about the story, if you want to know what the surprise was with Melvin Brown, if you want to know what the actual horror elements are, just ask in the comments. I'll put a spoiler warning, and we can talk about it. I will have a link or two for this book in the description down below. Please like, share, and subscribe. And that's it for this episode of the Low Budget Review Show. I have been your host, Eric Smith, and until next time, read more books.